In at 10, Crying Child. Okay, now this one is certainly going to be a bit controversial, but there is no way that I could have done this list without mentioning one of the greatest debates of my DMs ever. I say this every time I bring it up. I don't think that the Crying Child's death was a Springlock failure, and I firmly believe that they are the one you should not have killed, meaning that they're the vengeful spirit possessing Afton and keeping him alive instead of being inside Golden Freddy. But with that being said, it's still possible that I'm wrong, okay? I'm man enough to admit it, and that's what this list is all about. Well, possibilities, not me being wrong. The idea that Crying Child is the one possessing Golden Freddy comes from the idea that the Fredbear animatronic that kills him in 1983 is converted into Golden Freddy come FNAF 1 in 1993, either because the Springlock suits got decommissioned despite this not being a Springlock failure, and then the Golden Freddy suit is just a shell, or because Afton didn't want to look at the thing that killed his son. And while this is a possibility, we know that Crying Child didn't actually die in the mouth of the suit. He died because of his head being crushed, yes, but he dies in the hospital as proven by the flatline at the end of FNAF 4. But I mean, everyone's gonna be mad at me for saying this anyway, so I guess I'm just not gonna read the video comments. In at 9, Jeremy Fitzgerald. At the end of every FNAF game, there's a bonus night. Then it gives you more lore clues, then it gives you more scares. But then after beating that one, you unlock a 7th night where you can customize the animatronics and give them like specific levels to see how hard you can really make it for yourself. However, if you were to do this in Five Nights 1, you'd obviously be looking for more clues, trying to figure out like the first in what would be an incredible series of games. If you tried to solve this though by being sneaky and inputting the animatronic levels to be 1, 9, 8, and 7, the year of the infamous bite, or at least the first one, you'd end up getting instantly jump scared by Golden Freddy, which, while hilarious, is still creepy and unexpected. I mean, like, I get that Scott wanted to shut rumors down about there being like a secret camera or something, but like, why couldn't this just be a normal night that proved them wrong because it wasn't real? Like, what if someone wanted to actually have those levels for whatever reason, and then boom, they get spooked by Golden Freddy instantly? It's kind of rude, okay? But it's also interesting to think that the year 1987 would summon Golden Freddy. If you end up thinking about it, and end up thinking about it too much probably, that this could be an implication that Golden Freddy caused the bite of 87, and that Jeremy Fitzgerald, who we play as in FNAF 2, who many assume to be the bite victim, could be the one possessing the animatronic. At least if we ignore that the missing children's incident takes place 2 years prior. In at 8, Multiple. The prevalent theory for Golden Freddy is that the animatronic is actually possessed by 2 souls. This idea comes from the survival logbook and the FNAF 3 bad ending 2-eye theory. The 2-eye theory states that in the FNAF 3 bad ending there are 2 eyes lit up in the head in the back, which we are assuming is Golden Freddy, to show that there are 2 souls in the animatronic. Well, with regards to the 2-eye theory at least, that's incorrect. You see, it would actually be more difficult to tell that the thing in the back was an animatronic head if there was only 1 eye lit up, since all we see of this head are the eyes, and the light comes out of the other eye just due to the reflection of the first light, since it's that dark. Notice how Freddy also has some light coming out of his other eye. You can't really ignore how light works in this situation, okay? It's just like a fundamental law of everything. Plus, Crying Child, who many assume to be the second spirit, hadn't been introduced into the series yet, not coming until the next game that wasn't even going to happen originally, since this was supposed to be the bed of the series. That's why we released the souls in the Happiest Day minigame. And notice that there's only one person wearing a Golden Freddy mask in the minigame. If there were 2 spirits that were intended at this stage, wouldn't there have been 2 kids wearing the mask? I mean, it was supposed to be the end after all. And according to the official Freddy Files Updated Edition book, quote, you'll see an image of broken animatronic heads, each with a lit eye. 1. In at 7, Phone Guy. Phone Guy's death is one of the most mysterious deaths of all time. We hear him die in FNAF 1 on night 4 with the sounds of multiple animatronics banging on his doors, but we never really get an explanation as to what happens to him. I mean, like, we know he dies, but other than that, it's all speculation. One of the theories is that the animatronics ended up getting him and shoving him into a suit, resulting in a painful death, especially since at this point the Springlock suits were either still in operation or hadn't really been totally removed. I don't know, the actual timeline of events for the Springlock suits is a little messy still, since we don't really have the years for things like them getting scrapped. Yet it's still possible that Phone Guy was shoved into one, or maybe used it to hide from them and then it failed. However, another theory is that he gets killed by Golden Freddy, which could mean that he might end up possessing the animatronic. We have to get the whole shadow animatronics thing somehow, right? Plus, we very clearly hear Golden Freddy in the recording of Phone Guy just before he dies, suggesting that they had a prominent part in his demise. I mean, like, it's highly unlikely, but honestly, Phone Guy is more important to us than Cassidy does, so it could make more sense. At least, if this wasn't after the missing children's incident. And at 6, random. Honestly, there's also a slim chance that this is just a random kid that Afton killed in the incident, and they just haven't been named yet. And that this whole time we've been like being fed red herrings just to keep us talking about the series now that games aren't coming out every 3 months. And honestly, that's nothing new. Companies use that kind of marketing all the time to increase hype and discussion without really having to spend any money. I mean, look at how No Way Home was marketed, okay? I don't know how anyone would have gotten a picture of Andrew Garfield on set like that without anyone noticing or without being connected to the company, okay? Like, in my opinion, that leaked image of him in the final fight scene had to be intentional. But the posters they were also releasing were just horrifying to start with. I mean, like, the first picture looked like something I would have made in high school, but I would have done a better job, okay? But I mean, no matter what, it worked. We were talking about how bad the poster was, and then every new poster that they had released after because they were of the same quality. And not even just nerd or news channels. Even Photoshop channels were remaking the poster in better quality. They never had to spend a dime to get us talking about that, and by making worse posters, they probably spent less on the graphics budget for those as well. So the possibility of Golden Freddy being revealed to have been possessed by a random person we've never heard of isn't out of the realm of possibility for me, alright? It could happen. Plus, it's definitely like Scott to do that. Halfway through into number 5, Kelsey. Kelsey is in essence the main antagonist of the Fazbear Frights story The New Kid from the 3rd Fazbear Frights book 135 AM. Kelsey had just moved to town and ends up making friends with the protagonist, Devin. Devin ends up getting jealous of how much everyone loves Kelsey, so he hatches a plan with his friend to trap him in a spring-lock suit for a few hours, because, you know, that wouldn't result in death normally. However, when they unleash their plan, the spring-lock suit fails and kills Kelsey. I don't know how you were planning to lock him in there if you weren't going to use the actual spring locks, but okay. But at least they thought he was dead, since a week later Devin returns to make sure that Kelsey is still in the suit, only to find a different body inside. He knows that it's someone else because the hair color is different, and then Devin gets stuck and bleeds out, only for the story to cut back to Kelsey meeting 2 more kids at his new school. Yeah, it's an interesting story because while Kelsey did get spring locks, he ends up being fine, so what really happened? Some think that Kelsey is a ghost, some think that he's the one that you should not have killed, but no matter what, we all feel like there is a high possibility that Kelsey was at least at one point possessing Golden Freddy, whether it be before the missing children's incident, afterwards, hell, maybe Kelsey possessing an animatronic is what made Afton realize that they were all possessed. Honestly, it's unknown, but given that we didn't really get a name for Golden Freddy's spirit on a grave and instead found it in a book, I guess you could say that the name Cassidy isn't set in stone. Ha, get it? You're welcome. And at 4, nobody. The thing about hallucinations is that they're not real. And we haven't really seen Golden Freddy on any of the cameras at any point in this series. We've only seen him randomly show up in the office, even if the doors are closed and he doesn't move. The hallucinations we see are potentially because of him, but in FNAF 3, we see that those phantom animatronics are also hallucinations that are caused thanks to systems malfunctioning. And that's in a facility 30 years after the first game. So, what if Golden Freddy just isn't real? What if these are all just hallucinations that Michael is seeing due to a poor working environment and, you know, a lot of stress, and then they manifest as a version of the animatronic he feels the most guilty about because it killed his brother? I mean, it makes sense. The "it's me" would be about the animatronic. Like, it's me, the one who killed your brother, back to haunt you even more. Or it could just be him assuming that his brother would be possessing the animatronic like how the others are possessed. It would explain why we never see a physical manifestation other than in our office with obvious additional hallucinations, and it would explain why the animatronic's past is so mysterious and odd, because they aren't real. They were discontinued after FNAF 4's Bite, maybe because it was too hard for William, and it would explain why the logbook that we figured was intended to give us his name was also full of hallucinations, and why it was very clearly originally meant for Mike. Huh. Maybe I should look into that one more. It would also actually let Cassidy be the one you should not have killed, because they couldn't be possessing Golden Freddy, because Golden Freddy wouldn't be real. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Shadow Freddy. One of the oldest theories in existence, or at least FNAF-wise. FNAF 2 wise, is that the shadow animatronics are the first Springlock victims. This comes to us after the FNAF 3 phone guy dialogue that mentioned multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, which some interpreted as multiple Springlock suits failing at once, since the term Springlock in this situation could be used to describe the suit as a whole, or the individual Springlock mechanisms that are present within the suit. So the line of multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures could mean multiple of the Springlocks inside a suit failing at the same time, or more than one suit failing at the same time. This led some to theorize that previous employees were killed in the Springlock suits, which is where the shadow animatronics come from. This is supported by the fact that these shadows are of Freddy and Bonnie, the two animatronics that have Springlock versions. However, the other popular theory is that these are spirits who were at one point possessing their respective animatronics and got kicked out for whatever reason. This is kind of where that theory idea falls apart, because there are multiple explanations as to why they were kicked out. Some say they weren't as angry as the next ones, others say that they didn't suffer as much agony, others say it's cause the one who came next simply didn't want to share. But nonetheless, despite the improbability, it's possible and thus can be on this list. But ultimately, in at number 2, Michael Brooks. Golden Freddy is a major character within the Silver Eyes, where unlike in the games, he's possessed by a boy named Michael Brooks. In the Silver Eyes, he's also implied to be the mascot suit used to lure children away into the back rooms. Michael Brooks is a secondary protagonist in the Silver Eyes, the Twisted Ones, and in the Fourth Closet, and he's one of the children killed in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and is actually a childhood friend of Charlie. Michael is a little kid with a round face and rosy cheeks with brown wide eyes that glisten and short brown hair. Remember that one. He wears a blue t-shirt and was actually friends with the protagonists of the novel. He's actually also described as a kind and friendly person with all people in the school, despite seemingly being 5 years old at the time of the missing children's incident, since Charlie was killed at 3 years old in 1983, and assuming that they were all the same age. But one day, while he was in Freddy Fazbear's with his friends, William comes in, kidnaps him, kills him, you know the deal. But then 10 years later, his parents decide to commemorate the anniversary of his tragedy and make a scholarship dedicated to a 5-year-old kid. Interesting choice. However, notice that Michael, like I said, is described as having brown hair. And in FNAF 4, we see what is possibly a tuft of brown hair poking out of the torso of a fatter yellow animatronic. Yeah, maybe more than one Michael was subjected to William's torment. And like I said, we didn't see Golden Freddy's name on the actual grave, we only got it in what would be their name in a random book. So I mean, come on. Mike's name was also in that book. Just saying. And finally, in number 1, Cassidy. I know that I've basically been saying Golden Freddy's identity isn't guaranteed this entire time, and while technically it isn't, Cassidy is typically seen as the de facto possessor of Golden Freddy, although some also view her as the one you should not have killed, aka the one possessing Afton and keeping him alive so that he can suffer. But again, if that was the case, she wouldn't be able to possess both Golden Freddy and William, so for those of you who think both, you kinda gotta pick one. However, Cassidy's name was revealed in the FNAF Survival Logbook, an activity book with a kind of like wreck this journal vibe that seemed innocent enough at first. However, as you went through the book, you'd notice that a few things were off. There'd be random tally marks on certain pages, other pages had numbers that were highlighted in red and had the incorrect page number, and then there also seemed to be a spirit writing to us in faded text. Later on in the book, we would also see words getting switched around, and we would actually notice the repeated use of Golden Freddy's signature line of "It's me." By using the highlighted numbers as coordinates in the goddamn word search for whatever reason, we would end up spelling the name Cassidy, and then everyone's like, yep, this is Golden Freddy's name, and it's just accepted now, despite the only real connection to Golden Freddy in this book being the "It's me" line and other odd references. But after seeing 9 other options, that makes sense, for this character's actual identity, do you still think that it's Cassidy? Be sure to let me know down below, alright? If you do it respectfully, at least. And at 10, Springtrap. Now, this number is really meta, and that's why it's starting off the list. But this isn't a metaphorical or philosophical number as if you thought it was going to be. Springtrap has literally killed other versions of himself in the Fazbear Fright story of In the Flesh, from the 5th Fazbear Frights book Bunny Call. After Matt hadn't play tested a VR game he was working on for a few days called Springtrap's Revenge, he came back to find piles of dead Springtraps that the AI had somehow spawned in order to have something to kill. It's absolutely horrifying, and it's just plain weird. Like, why would you spawn more versions of yourself in order to have something to kill? Like, isn't that just like a paradox? Like how you physically are unable to prevent yourself from being born, since if you do, you fade out of existence, but then you can't go back and prevent it. So like, you can't stop yourself from being born, because then you can't stop yourself from being born. I mean, well, depending on what theories about time travel that you believe, whether you believe Back to the Future or Endgame. That also makes it impossible for your younger siblings to prevent you from being born, but the older ones can prevent the younger ones, because they'd still be alive before you were conceived. So watch out, Jordan. And at 9, Hudson. Hudson is the protagonist of What We Found, the third story in the 8th Fazbear Frights book Gumdrop Angel. Hudson has short blonde hair with a pale beard and blue eyes. He also has straight white teeth. He has bruises and burns all over his body. He's 6'1" and skinny. Almost like me, except my teeth aren't white and I'm not 6'1", and I don't have a beard. But I have blue eyes and I'm skinny. Hudson is a security guard at the upcoming horror attraction of Fazbear's Fright. His life up to this point has been filled with nothing but tragedy. His father committed suicide and his mother remarried a man named Lewis, who would physically abuse Hudson at nearly every chance he got. He also became the main target for bullies who would hold his head down while flushing a toilet. Hudson began to fail school, and instead of trying to help him, the teachers would instead call him names and tell him that he's dumb. Gotta love the public school system, am I right? The story would later reveal that Hudson's family home burned down with Lewis and his mother inside, killing them. While Hudson does burn in an oven at the end of the story, he was in essence driven there by Springtrap, who was the main antagonist of the story. So still a Springtrap victim. By the way, Hudson was also the one who set the fire that killed his mom and Lewis, so. And at 8, Jeremy. There aren't many glitch trap victims, so we can't really do one of those lists. But since Jeremy from FNAF VR was driven to suicide by Glitch Trap, who is William Afton's code form, I think it's close enough to deem a Springtrap killing. Jeremy from FNAF VR is the game tester who tested the game before Tape Girl, and is the one who Tape Girl found after he cut off his face using a guillotine paper cutter. This was thanks to William invading Jeremy's mind through the use of the VR game, which is still confusing to me, since unless you were connected in some form of Sword Art Online haptic suit, it shouldn't really be possible. We're only seeing the game with our eyes, not plugged in like the Matrix, but I don't know why I'm bothered by it. I mean, I'm literally talking about a game series where a man possessed by the spirit of a child exploded after somehow communicating while comatose, had then used his intense agony to possess a hard drive that then gets scanned to create an AI that allows this man to continue living. So I don't know why I'm getting caught up in semantics, honestly, but yeah. Jeremy. And at 7, Vanny. Vanny is the planned main antagonist of the next FNAF game Security Breach. There is not much we know about Vanny, but there are plenty of theories. Some believe Vanny to be the glitch trap controlled version of Vanessa, which would make sense. Some also believe that she was the girl who recorded the tapes in FNAF VR, aptly referred to as Tape Girl, who I literally just mentioned, which would also make sense. And while both of these are probably true, even if they aren't, somehow Vanny did fall under William's control, which in essence makes her a Springtrap victim, even if it was Glitch Trap who was controlling her. But he also would have manifested in that suit because he didn't want to relive the agony of being spring locked, so he was still basically Springtrap. Look, this was a hard list, okay? And I had to add this number at the end. I had to add it so that I had 10 points, okay? So chill for a minute and let me do my thing. And at 6, Charlie. Okay, so in a way, Charlie in the Twisted Ones novel is a victim of Springtrap. And by in a way, I'm gonna have to suspend my disbelief because she was still a robot. While the original Charlie was killed by William Afton, in the Twisted Ones, one of the 4 robotic versions of Charlie gets snatched by a twisted animatronic and gets killed. Which only makes things more confusing when another version of Charlie, who is much older, shows up. But that's not the point. The point is that at this point, William had become Springtrap, and the twisted animatronics were his invention. So while yes, she was a robot, she was still a sentient robot who got snatched by an Afton creation after he had become Springtrap, so that's good enough for me. This was, like I said, actually harder than I thought it was going to be. William doesn't do much killing after becoming Springtrap, because he's locked in a room for 30 years. Most of the damage was already done at that point, so please forgive a few leaps in logic or suspension of disbelief, please. Thank you. Halfway through into number 5, Matthew. Remember how earlier I talked about how Springtrap was killing himself in the Springtrap's Revenge VR game in the Fazbear Frights book Bunny Call? Well, not only does he do that, but he also tears the main character Matthew to shreds. Now, some do consider this Matthew to be a reference to MatPat of Game Theory, and it makes sense why. But what makes this bad is that the community considers this an M-Preg fanfiction, which I have to say, I enjoyed not knowing what that was until I had to ask my sister about it because it was everywhere online. she's really into fanfiction, it's kinda concerning. Anyway, basically Matthew in this story gets implanted with a baby Springtrap thanks to a program called itsaboy.exe, which literally ends up tearing him to shreds from the inside out. Hardly a fun experience, I would say. Yet some women go their whole lives wanting to give birth and have kids. But I mean, at least most of the time, they don't kill you from the inside out. Or rather, they don't usually claw at you and dig through your stomach. That's exclusive to Springtrap. I hope. And at 4, Henry. Henry is another case that is kind of like victim adjacent. And not in a sense where he was a victim because he killed Charlie like I said last time, but rather because Henry lets himself die in FNAF 6 in order to ensure that nobody remembers what William did. However, William does end up escaping, but Henry stayed put and let himself burn in the FNAF 6 fire because of Springtrap. And then it turned out that it was all for nothing, because nobody is standing in his way anymore. So honestly, while not directly killed by Springtrap or William, Henry is one of the biggest victims that William has. He took his family and his life, all for nothing, since it didn't actually put an end to his reign of terror. But maybe, like the ultimate custom night Samurai Freddy cutscene suggests, maybe Henry is also still alive, possessing an object looking to come back to keep pursuing that anime fox. At least, I wouldn't be surprised if Henry turned out to be Glamrock Freddy or something like that. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Gregory. Now, with Security Breach not releasing until late 2021, we can only speculate as to what happens to our next main character and our player, Gregory, in the next Fazbear game. However, it's entirely possible that Gregory ends up getting killed. Think about it. This is literally a kid who is fighting one of the FNAF universe's deadliest child serial killers, who has multiple animatronics out to find him and control over a security guard. Not only that, but it's entirely possible that Glamrock Freddy ends up betraying us and crushing us while we're inside of him. That sounded weird. It's not like we haven't been killed in the games before, or at least horribly mutilated like we were in Sister Location. And we as the player die in FNAF 6 along with Henry. So Scott is not new to killing off the main player in his games. But also, realistically, he's a kid. And like, what's he gonna be able to do against a literal sentient code? And if he lives, there will be someone to tell the cops what happened. And if William was paying them off, he certainly wasn't anymore, so maybe they can have an actual investigation this time. But only if Gregory lives, so he's probably gonna die. Penultimately, in at number 2, Michael Afton. Now, this may be confusing to some of you since Michael doesn't die until FNAF 6, but come on, this guy is the biggest Springtrap victim of them all. Let's just recap what happens to Springtrap's own son, for God's sake. He kills his brother, assuming that's actually what happened. He then learns about his father's killing spree and tries to right his wrongs. While doing so, he is haunted by the spirits of the children his father has killed, and then learns about how his sister has possessed an animatronic after getting scooped so many years ago. Then he learns that he is probably a robot and gets ripped open by a scooping machine. After this, a giant robot amalgamation of parts fills his body and lets him bruise and rot while wearing him like a suit after Barney Stinson had a mental breakdown, and then he vomits that entire animatronic back out. Can you imagine how painful that would be? The 7-foot tall mass that is entered coming out of your throat. But somehow, he's still alive. Then he finds a job posting about a new Fazbear location and applies for it, but then has to salvage animatronics that include the thing that ruined his body, his long dead sister, one of his father's earliest victims, and his father, all of which may kill him if he's not on high alert. This man has suffered probably the most in the entire series. That's absolutely horrifying. Finally, and at number 1, William Afton. Yes, here we are again. While I already said Springtrap himself as the first number, I'm gonna round it off with some more self-reflection. Like I said, this list was hard. However, the most important victim Springtrap could have had would have been William Afton himself. Let's remember, Springtrap isn't a separate character. He is the body of William Afton that got spring-locked after he hastily put on his murder costume in the back room of an early Fazbear location after accidentally releasing the souls of his original victims. Whether it was to make them feel scared or to make himself feel more powerful, his haste coupled with the moisture from the leaking ceiling caused the spring-lock mechanisms to fail, shooting thousands of metal parts deep into his body. It would have killed him if not for the spirit that had possessed him that was intentionally keeping him alive. That's brutal. I mean, he absolutely deserves it, don't get me wrong, but that has to be included on this list. I mean, I was told that William should have been on the purple guy victims list, so there you go. here he is. In at 10, Shadow Animatronics. One of the oldest theories is that the Shadow Animatronics are the first Springlock victims, and while they are from the main FNAF universe, this is a fan theory, so it counts. This comes to us after the FNAF 3 phone guide dialogue that mentioned multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, which some interpreted as multiple Springlock suits failing at once, since the term Springlock in this situation is used to describe the suit as a whole, and instead of the individual Springlock mechanisms that are present within the suit. So the line of multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures could mean multiple of the Springlocks inside one suit failing at the same time, or more than one suit failing at the same time. This led some to theorize that previous employees were killed in the Springlock suits, which is where the Shadow Animatronics come from. This is supported by the fact that these shadows are of Freddy and Bonnie, the two animatronics that have Springlock versions, and while there are holes in this theory, this is, like, potentially the case. It's an idea at the very least. So yeah, Shadow Animatronics are fan Springlock victims because it's not confirmed. That's how I made it work. In at 9, Grim Fredbear. Grim Fredbear is one of the antagonists in Final Nights 3 Nightmares Awoken. He's only active on Night 5 and is found by the left hallway. Grim Fredbear resembles the normal golden Fredbear, only with his suit glowing a deep purple color, while the interior of the suit glows a bright white. His upper face appears to be torn off, including his eyes, leaving an empty, hollow, gaping hole in its place, and the inside of the mask, though it appears like there is nothing inside, actually conceals a white, pale human head that can only be seen during the jump scare. And before you ask, yes, it's mine. I was going to make that a joke, but I actually wrote that into the script. Holy crap. This animatronic is clearly meant to be a reference to Shadow Freddy and the theory that the Shadow Animatronics are Springlock victims, which was confirmed to be false by Scott when he stated that William was a Springlock failure, but still, okay? On the museum level of Final Nights, which unlocks after Night 5, it is revealed that Grim Fredbear is a Springlock victim, saying, quote, another Springlock failure victim, the second generation of Fredbear. In at 8, Fred Trap. To be honest, I searched this up just for the hell of it, and there actually are Fredbear versions of Springtrap, which is kinda cool, but I mean, kind of expected. Fred Trap is exactly what you would expect. Springtrap's look on a yellow Freddy animatronic. The designs are actually really well made and honestly are scarier than normal Springtrap for me. I mean, I don't know, I guess for some reason I think bears are scarier than rabbits. Don't know why I would think that. But I think that Scott made William use the Spring Bonnie suit because of how scared Scott himself was of it, but that could also just be idle speculation. There's another theory that I have that maybe he was going to use the Fredbear animatronic, but then after his son got killed by it, he switched to Bonnie. There are also even more rundown versions and even scrap versions of Fred Trap, which are already haunting when you don't think about the fact that it would still be William inside the suit being kept alive by the spirit of his dead kid. Yeah, so Fredbear is definitely one of the more strangely unique versions that I've seen for this list, and you know what? I'm pretty damn impressed. These designs are pretty good. In at 7, Shadow Spring Bonnie. Shadow Spring Bonnie is one of the two primary antagonists of Final Nights 2. He is one of the final animatronics in the game. Shadow Spring Bonnie resembles Springtrap, as to be expected when mentioning Springlock suits, but similar to Springtrap, he lacks the suit on his feet and has a majority of his right ear missing. Overall, he has rips, but not any real missing limbs or parts at all, which is a stark contrast to the burnt animatronics in the first 4 nights of this game. His face glows white, which is noticeable when he's in the hallway, but also gives him a more sinister appearance and pushes the something supernatural that most of the Shadow animatronics have, like with Shadow Bonnie from FNAF AR. Shadow Spring Bonnie takes the role of Burnt Freddy and Burnt Foxy on Night 5, which means that he's very fast, so the player needs to seal the vent quickly, otherwise you'll get jump scared. He also may appear in the hallway, but if he does, never use your flashlight, otherwise you'll get insta-killed. Instead, you need to inspect his face when he appears there, and if he's twitching, close the door. A rattling sound will be heard so that you know he's left. And the fact that you need to look at his face to see if you're in danger just makes this even scarier, especially considering the fact that most of what you need to do relies on fast reflexes, and then you're just sitting there trying to figure out if he's really twitching or if that's just you going crazy. Not from personal experience, I don't know. What? In at 6, Golden Call. As a human, when alive, Golden Call's name was Kyle. However, now he is a Springlock victim stuck inside a Golden Freddy Springlock suit. Golden Call has the typical rundown Springlock suit vibe, similar to Springtrap. However, this is even more gruesome. His left ear is bent, he has bugs coming out of basically every hole in his body, human eyes are hanging out of the animatronic's eye sockets, he's missing the exosuit on his right foot, and his character is holding a flesh-colored, at least colored, it's probably flesh-made, let's be honest, phone in his right hand that stays stuck to his head via more flesh or like blood tendril strands connecting to the side of his head, okay? It's horrifying. It's a monstrosity. And looking at his age on the wiki, Kyle was only 5 years old when he got spring locked, which is absolutely nuts and just flat out horrible. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Yikes. This kid could have been the next best Fortnite player. Halfway through into number 5, Grim Chica. The first Springlock victim in the Final Nights series, Grim Chica is the primary antagonist in Final Nights 3 Nightmares Awaken. Unlike the others though, she is not a Reaper animatronic. Grim Chica holds a strong appearance to the Springlock suits on the poster in the Night 3 cutscene, but her face plates are very hard to spot. She's also almost entirely purple. The glowing accents inside her suit resemble a human corpse. She lacks a bib unlike the original Chica, and overall her body is very slim like the original toy Chica, except for her hips, which appear to be much wider, which is making me all sorts of confused. And she lacks shoulders or upper arms, with her forearms protruding from her armpits. So yeah, not confused anymore. Grim Chica is also revealed to be a Springlock victim in the museum level, saying, quote, a victim of a Springlock failure, forever forced to haunt the suit she was wearing, now being manipulated by your sister and mother, tried spray on tan, still very pale. Why is this relatable to me? Why are these two the two Springlock victims from Final Nights 3 so relatable? No matter what I'll do, I'm always gonna be pasty, and you know what, I'm okay with that. However, I did rank this above Grim Fredbear because it's Chica. And look at how they massacred my baby. Oh man, I'm sorry, mommy. These transgressions will not be accepted. In at 4, Am I Real? Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear, is presumably the primary and most recurring antagonist in Dormitibus. Am I Real has two different forms. His first form is Cake Bear, and Cake Bear's design originated from the Save Him minigame, where he delivered cake to children while someone is being killed outside. He's the predecessor to both Fredbear and Freddy Fazbear, but Cake Bear is a brown bear animatronic that also acts as a Springlock suit that appears in most of the main nights. Although they look slightly similar, the only similarities it really has to Freddy is that they both possess a top hat, are brown, have blue eyes, and are a bear, which I mean, I guess is the whole character. Am I Real's second form is the form that resembles Springtrap. This form has a green color, much like Springtrap does, and actually contains human remains. Great. His right eye socket has gotten bigger on the side, and there's a big hole that can be seen on the right side of his head. His top hat has received some withering, because, you know, it has a corpse inside. His lower jaw is slanted and worn down. He doesn't have it's not circular like Cake Bear's. He has a sizable hole in the right side of his torso as well, revealing organs. He has rips and tears covering his arms, revealing more human remains, and he just appears to be missing like a finger on his right hand for whatever reason. And you know what? No matter what, it's still terrifying to look at. And of course, 3 out of 10 of these are going to be from Dormitibus, okay? Because like, have you ever played Dormitibus? Have you seen these guys? They're terrifying. Just wait. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Reaper Spring Bonnie. Reaper Spring Bonnie, however, is the opposite of Stage Bonnie. This Reaper variant appears in Final Nights 3 and 4 and is an absolute monstrosity. But it's definitely more terrifying in Final Nights 4, so let's focus on that one. He is 100% the scariest animatronic in this series. In essence, Reaper Spring Bonnie is a nightmare Springtrap. He has sharp teeth and a very damaged and withered body. His suit is dark yellow in color. He sports a big purple bow tie on his upper chest, kinda like Glitch Trap. And then, like the other Reaper animatronics, Reaper Spring Bonnie has one pair of hollow, dark eyes that will steal your soul. I added that last part, but it's probably true. In Final Nights 4, his appearance is much more disfigured and gruesome, with sharper teeth, sharper claws, a different jaw, growths on his shoulders resembling fungi, and you know, a kind of a gooier appearance overall. It's like the slime girl from YouTube if she made a FNAF character. He's also missing half of his right ear like Springtrap in FNAF 3, and his suit is more greenish in color this time around to be more like Springtrap. And oh my god, this thing is still terrifying, and it's more terrifying than Springtrap, okay? This is what Springtrap should have been, or honestly, this is what I think like a Nightmare Springtrap would look like, okay? This is like a prototype Burn Trap in my eyes, or the way I'm thinking, like Melt Trap, the next iteration of Afton. But ultimately, in at number 2, Garvey, a psychopathic, cold-blooded killer. He stopped being human long ago. That's how Garvey is described in the extras of Dormitibus, okay? Garvey is the penultimate antagonist in Dormitibus. As a human, he was the man who murdered the missing children. cauldron and later went on to get trapped in Spring Bonnie, becoming Springtrap. He was then burnt to a permanent death in the Fazbear Frights fire, unlike our William Afton, but that's not only where he differs, because Garvey is more gooey. He's a more gooey or gory version of Springtrap from FNAF 3, and it's also actually not William Afton, since this game was released before the official name reveal, even before FNAF 4. So yeah, he's Springtrap, but with hardly any exosuit or animatronic casing, whatever you end up wanting to call it. He crawls on all fours and uses his left hand as a foot and his left foot as a hand, like some demon monkey from hell that even Satan doesn't want around, okay? He's like trying to like send it away. He's like, yeah, no, don't. Like, you're seeing pictures, okay? Like, tell me, do you think that it shouldn't be on this list, okay? Because if you're saying that, you're lying. I can tell. And finally, in number 1, you. Spoiler alert for a fan game. The fan game, which if I say the name will spoil it, so if you want to avoid spoilers, just go to the bloopers, but like, thanks for watching. But either way, I'll give you the chance to do that. Okay, there we go. That was your chance. You're done. A Shadow Over Freddy's is a FNAF fan game created by Fiznom on Game Jolt. It was released on the 25th of April 2018. And you know, since it was made by the same guy who is currently working on FNAF Plus for the Fazbear Fanverse, you know it's gonna be good. The gameplay of A Shadow Over Freddy's is a hybrid between a traditional point-and-click game and a free-roaming horror game. The player wakes up to find themselves with no memories in a black and white abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and is tasked with surviving 5 nights and escaping the restaurant. The player is given a different set of tasks each night and must complete said tasks before 6 AM and without being attacked by any roaming animatronics. However, the ending of this game has you getting trapped in a springlock suit and left to rot, meaning that you are a springlock victim, which is probably the scariest victim of them all. I don't know about you, some of you I do because I've seen the comments, but I would rather not get springlocked. It's also revealed that you are William Afton in this game, but you know what, it's you, so it's good enough for me. And it's Henry. Now, there are many ways to consider Henry a victim of the purple guy, but he's first because not many of them are as direct as others. While we do see Henry get killed by a baby in FNAF World, in the main series games he lives on in FNAF 6, where he then gets burnt in a fire. Unless baby kills him in the FNAF 6 location before the fire can, since, you know, he cut her off earlier, but that's still just speculation. However, Henry was also the victim of purple guy's crimes when Charlotte died, as seen in FNAFs 2 and 6, as well as in the books, since Henry lost his book daughter Charlie to William when she was only 3 years old. Remember, when someone takes a life, the one who dies isn't the only victim. Their family and friends, anyone who loved them, are a victim as well. This also extends to Henry's wife, who we don't know the name of as far as I know, since she may still be alive in the games. And at 9, Gabriel. Gabriel was one of the original 5 missing children from the first ever incident that we learned about in the games. We believe his soul passed into the Freddy animatronic based on the gravestone ending and the placement of the FNAF 3 heads. Gabriel hasn't really ever gotten much of a description, aside from a brief mention in the books, but that description could also be referencing Jeremy, and it's just based on Crying Child from FNAF 4's 8-bit minigames, so there isn't really much validity to it. But I wonder how Gabriel feels about being the mascot of the company in essence, cause you know, with over 25 versions of the character being present throughout the separate games, you're a pretty popular fellow. I originally had a theory that we played as someone named Gabriel in FNAF VR, since we ended up getting stuck into the Freddy animatronic in the pizza party ending, but I think that Gregory from Security Breach will be a better Gabriel comparison, especially with this whole hiding in Glamrock Freddy thing. And it ate Susie. Susie was the first to die, which is pretty horrifying when you think about it, but also kinda liberating if you think about it in another way. Horrifying because, like, you know, you get killed out of nowhere and that sucks hard. But liberating because, while yes, you're dead, you also dead, so you don't really have to worry about anything else. Well, I suppose not in this case, since they go on to possess the animatronic, but like, they don't have to worry about anything in their future, like just getting revenge on their killer. And honestly, that sounds like the life. Like, not having to pay rent and then just doing everything in your power to stop a serial killer. That sounds like my kind of vacation. But nevertheless, being the first to die is a pretty serious thing. We know she was the first thanks to Withered Chica's voice line in Ultimate Custom Night, and keep in mind that the Withered animatronics are the original ones after being decommissioned when the restaurant closed prior to FNAF 2, since FNAF 2 is still a prequel and one of the first games in the timeline, so she is Withered Chica, even if she's also Chica. Gotta love the games. And it's 7, Fritz. Fritz is also one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic, Foxy. I guess in a way it was meant to be, given that both of their names start with an F and are shorter than their other names. The others actually also have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the the same amount of letters as Bonnie, and Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters as well. That's freaking weird, man. But not much else is known about Fritz. There originally was a theory that Fritz was a good guy who wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Ultimate Custom Night during like an April Fool's update or something, where Foxy's mechanics were changed to just like block one of the doors instead of kill you. Like, this was actually a joke though, since other mechanics were referencing other theories as well, like Phone Guy being Springtrap, and like, cause well, Springtrap couldn't be moving when Purple Guy was talking, as well as like Nightmare Freddy making you wake up from your nightmare, and that was referencing to Dream Theory. I mean, like, I wish I could wake up from this nightmare though. Oh wait, this is real? I talk about FNAF on the internet daily. That's actually a thing? I'm not having a nightmare? Oh great. And at 6, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was an unintentional victim of the Purple Guy, given that Elizabeth was in fact his daughter. In the aftermath of his murder den closing, Afton set up shop in a new restaurant he owned called Circus Baby's Pizza World. At least one that he started opening, where the feature animatronics were actually giant murder robots hungry for the flesh of children. Because, you know, that's what this series has come to at that point. He warned his kids to stay away from the animatronics, especially his daughter Elizabeth, since she had such a fascination with the main star baby, but she didn't listen. So in a moment of ultimate regret, she done got herself scooped, basically insta-killing her while baby's arm grabbed her, pulled her in, and then crushed her and put her in a storage unit. While he didn't kill her directly, he still killed her, and then even victimized himself, since, you know, it was his daughter that got scooped, and William's also a victim because he killed his daughter. But then this leads him to discover possession at the hands of Agony, but I don't think that he knows that it's Agony, but then that completely changes his motive, so he goes on to commit more murders. It's a pivotal death in the Purple Guy chronology, or story. High five doing at number 5, Vanny. Vanny is kind of a different victim in the sense that she isn't dead, but she has been controlled by Afton in the form of a mind virus that is just pretty damn ridiculous even for the FNAF series. But presumably getting caught by testing the FNAF VR game, or maybe through FNAF AR, she gets partially controlled by William. Hence the potential double personality that we see as hinted at through the FNAF AR emails. But this could also just be Tape Girl that we hear in FNAF VR, who is the one who gives you false information about how to beat Glitch Trap. Vanny, we know, is a victim of the Purple Guy since, well, he's been the only killer in the series up until this point, and she wears a fabric bunny suit, alluding to the fact that William had his Spring Bonnie suit that turned him into Springtrap and, you know, the whole Glitch Trap thing. Gotta love them parallels. This is how serial killers are caught, though. Like, change your MO every once in a while. They only catch the stupid criminals, so don't be stupid. I mean, don't be a criminal. Especially, just don't do it. And at 4, Jeremy's. As I said in the Souls Trapped in Animatronics video, Jeremy is one of the biggest troll names in FNAF history, being used for 3 separate characters, which, I mean, doesn't sound like a lot, but for FNAF it is. However, only 2 of them are the direct victims of Purple Guy. Jeremy is the name of one of the original missing children, and as I said earlier, he goes on to possess Bonnie. The other Jeremy is a playtester for the Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience, the game we tested in FNAF VR, the one who tested it before Tape Girl, who ends up finding the Glitch Trap anomaly and causes him to go mad. And by going mad, I genuinely mean, like, absolutely psycho. Jeremy ends up cutting off his own face. But I mean, like, that's also interesting because, like, Withered Bonnie, the Withered Bonnie animatronic that we see in FNAF 2 is missing his face. And it's weird because Withered Bonnie is the Bonnie that's possessed by the missing children's incident Jeremy. Now, like, I don't know if that means anything or if it's intended or if it's just coincidence, but knowing this series, I'm always worried that, like, the smallest detail is gonna have the biggest consequence. And at 3, Cassidy. Cassidy is probably who you'd expect to be number 1 on this list. You know, the generally assumed, the one you should not have killed, the missing children's victim who went on to possess Golden Freddy. Cassidy is described in the novels as a young girl with long black hair, which is also the description of the only human to appear in the FNAF Survival Logbook, or Security Logbook, I call it both. The name Cassidy was also discovered in that book, when a Reddit theorist going by the username DPowerful1 took wrong or highlighted numbers from various pages and put those into word search and basic, like, in coordinates, and then he ended up finding the name Cassidy, which has gotta be the most complicated thing in history. Like, we dig through source code and we put audio files through goddamn spectrograms to try to find clues, but even this was too much for this series. Like, I don't know why I had to go and make things so complicated. Penultimately in at number 2, Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims Purple Guy has had. being the 6th victim, Charlotte gets killed outside the pizzeria, despite desperate attempts from her father, Henry, to prevent this, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed like a puppet to protect other kids but treat her as a priority. You know. He's a parent, I get it. However, when it gets trapped in its box, it's unable to make it out to Charlotte in time to save her. So, in another attempt, the puppet saves her in another way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic. As the puppet, Charlotte then goes on to share her gift of the second chance with the other animatronics, bringing them to life as well, resulting in William's ultimate undoing. In a way, Charlotte is really the one you should not have killed, since if he had spared her, maybe he wouldn't have lost his life in the end, or been spring-locked. So, yeah, shouldn't have done it. Finally, in at number 1, us. Now, this is why Cassidy isn't number 1. No matter what, we are a victim of the purple guy, and not in any philosophical way either. We are a direct victim of the purple guy, or William Afton, or Glitch Trap, or whatever you want to call him. Since, thanks to FNAF VR, no matter what you do, you end up losing at the end of the game. You either merge with him and join him on stage, or you complete the ritual only to get locked away in your own mind as William walks free in your body, or the easier one, we get stuffed into Freddy at the end of the pizza party minigame. But if you end up collecting all 16 tapes and actually fully complete the game, you're a victim of the purple guy. Like, he uses your body to commit whatever comes next. I mean, we could be Vanny, we could be Tape Girl giving it another shot, we could be some random bystander, but either way, we the player get gotten by this toxic, poisonous grip that is the purple guy. So, yeah, I'm gonna put myself at number 1. There you have it, friends, the top 10 FNAF purple guy victims. Who do you think should have been number 1, and is there anyone that you think I missed? Be sure you let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been and shall remain Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.